Alright, part 2. Preparing for the Introductory Tournament. The very thought of Georgine being connected to someone in the sovereignty filled me with unease. But Lenore gave me a smile. Lady Rosamond, I can understand your nervousness, she said, but this is a matter for the Ob to deal with. Your focus should be the upcoming Introductory Tournament, should it not? It crept much closer while you were bedridden. Brunhilde nodded. Indeed, the dedication ritual has afforded us a connection to the Zent himself, and we are engaged with joint research with those of with 3 greater duchies. We are sure to have more visitors than last year, which means our preparations are going to be even more arduous. They're right, Wilfred added. Let's leave the Trug incident to Father and focus on getting ready for the Introductory Tournament. How's the research with Arensbach going? They were all making an excellent point. I needed to focus on what was right in front of me. To that end, I did my best to change my mindset. Our joint research with Arensbach will resume once I read the letter that arrived, and Riarda permits me to leave the dormitory, I said. For the most part, Arensbach is going to be presenting our findings, so there won't actually be much for me to do. Included alongside my letter from Letizia was one from Ferdinand regarding our joint research. I wanted to go to my hidden room and read the parts written in visible ink as soon as possible, but I still couldn't risk getting too excited as I was being made to wait until my health was back to normal. Speaking of which, how is our joint research with Joanko going, I asked. Wilfred provided an answer. We're settled on what we're going to present. First is how to improve the quality and attributes of Ehrenfest's Fey paper, and second is how we've been using it. Also, Charlotte interjected, when it comes to using Fey paper as magic tools and the like, we have decided that each duchy will present its own discoveries. This agreement with Joanko sounded very similar to our agreement with Dunkelfelder. An understandable outcome since Wilfried had participated in our meeting with the latter before leading talks with the former. Presenting our own findings was advisable because it had prevented the high-ranking duchies from taking all the credit for themselves. It's good that we've managed to avoid Joanko publishing everything themselves, I said. So what ideas did we actually come up with? I don't remember receiving any reports. My first instinct was to look to Marianne, to whom I had suggested and self-playing instruments, but she quickly averted her gaze. Joanko started working on instruments that played themselves, she confessed. We tried researching them ourselves, but we could not make anywhere near as much progress. In other words, Joanko had ended up stealing the idea. Marianne and Ignaz both slumped their shoulders as they revealed that all of our research was inferior to that of our collaborator. Well, I mean, it's Joanko. What do you expect? Ignaz continued, you granted us such a valuable opportunity to collaborate with the Greater Duchy, Lady Rosamond, yet our results were subpar. We apologize. Sister, please do not rebuke them too much, Charlotte said, coming to their defense. This is their first time doing research with the Greater Duchy, and they did their best. It is simply the case that Joanko did better. Rebuke them? I shook my head. The thought did not even cross my mind. My only aim had been to increase the quality of our Fey paper and the value of paper made in Ehrenfest. As long as we had something to present, I didn't see an issue. Still, I said, it would be a shame if we had no notable discoveries to draw attention to ourselves. Let us focus on making books that automatically return to their shelves, improve the quality of non-Zed paper as much as you can. All we need to do is create moving books. We already have the magic circles needed to complete the process from there. Combining non-Zed paper with the magic books that Raymond had developed would surely be enough to produce movable versions of the light-thin books made in Ehrenfest, if not also the thicker ones used in other duchies. Creating a demonstration of the books returning to their shelves would surely turn a lot of heads during the Introductory Tournament. Moving on, I continued, if we assume that Joanko is intent on making its self-playing instruments out of the best paper available, then perhaps we can make ours more accessible. Our magic tools should require so little mana that even commoners will be able to use them. Even commoners could get their hands on low-quality face stones thanks to the face stone stores in the lower city, and if we could produce something similar to a music box, then it would even be possible to have music playing in places like the Italian restaurant, which was generally too high class for wandering minstrels who came and went like the wind. Perhaps we could have visiting customers buy face stones and select their own songs like a jukebox. That way, the Italian restaurant would be able to provide music without needing to open its pockets. We could technically make music boxes without relying on magic, but, well, I think Johann would die if I ordered one now. Johann was currently spending more than half of each year in other provinces teaching craftspeople how to make printing presses and metal letter types. Maybe I would ask him to make a music box when his workload started to relax, but spreading the printing industry was still a lot more important than my eyes. We could combine sheet music with face stones that even commoners are able to use, I mused. In an ideal world, one low-quality face stone would play one or two songs. I was casually listing off one idea after another like I did with speaking with Raymond or Zach, but Wolfrey quickly raised a hand to stop me. Rosemine, this is too much for them, he said. You're being too abrupt. On closer inspection, Marianne and Ignaz were looking a little queasy. Well, I was an entire year below them. All these ideas had come to me with relative ease. So 2 fourth-year apprentice art scholars were sure to breeze through their new assignment. At least that was my assumption. I instinctively turned to my own apprentice scholars. This is straightforward enough, right? You can minimize the mana cost by using a simple magic circle alongside some supplementary circles. And we already know that sound will play if you run a face stone across sheet music. Roderick and Feline had been making notes on their diptychs, but they both fell into thought when they met my gaze. As you said, Raymond has already designed the magic circles, right? Roderick asked. In that case, although the task ahead may seem complicated due to the involvement of commoners, it would actually be rather easy to realize. Perhaps we can write the sheet music with better quality ink to make the face stones efficient, Feline added. Both she and Roderick had to observe Raymond in me in Herschel's laboratory, so they were positively brimming with suggestions. Marianne and Ignaz exchanged anxious looks when they saw how easily my apprentice scholars were coming up with the solutions. But they ultimately faced me and said, we can do this. If they were successful and our joint research with Jawanko wouldn't appear entirely one-sided, I was looking forward to seeing their results. Sister, how was our joint research with Dunkelfelger progressing? Charlotte asked. It seems that your scholars made progress while you were asleep. Feline and Mariella stepped forward, whereupon Feline announced, we have finished organizing the results of Dunkelfelger's part of the research. All that remains is Ehrenfest ritual. We intend to include the thoughts and impressions of those who attended the ceremony, thoughts and impressions that you so graciously gathered for us. During tea parties, Lady Charlotte, we also found out yesterday that an apprentice art scholar who participated in our joint research ended up receiving the divine protection of a subordinate god. This information has since been worked into our research, or results. An art scholar who received divine protection after the dedication ritual, Charlotte asked, surprised. How can you give me their name? Mariella smiled. Lady Luridie of Jossbrenner. As far as I'm aware, she was the only third year who participated in the dedication ritual without having performed the ritual for obtaining divine protections. She took the advice of others and prayed non-stop in the run-up to her final exams. Archnobles were relatively quick studies, so everyone who had participated in the dedication ritual had already finished their classes. That is, with the exception of Luridie and an apprentice art scholar. She had yet to take her final exam by the time of the ceremony and prayed until the very last moment. Lady Luridie seems to have taken inspiration from the Jawanko students as she made a charm and prayed to it sincerely. Her focus was Blondfa, the goddess of sprouts. That is quite a rare goddess to pray to, I said. Lady Luridie is a scholar, so I would have assumed she would pray to Mestinora, the goddess of wisdom, as those from Jawanko do. Blondfa, the goddess of sprouts, appeared extremely often in Elvira's love stories, but she seemed to admire the dedicated charm too. Muriela smiled again, this time appearing especially amused. She prayed from the bottom of her heart to encounter more wondrous love stories. She prayed for more stories, not for her own romance to blossom. I suddenly felt some kinship with this Luridie. Like me, she must have been a failure at life who valued books more than reality. Perhaps she prayed faithfully or obsessively for her own desires, I pondered, or maybe because she's an archnoble, she was able to pour a lot of mana into her charm. She might even have an affinity for water. In any case, Lady Luridie obtained the divine protection of Blondfa, the goddess of sprouts, in no time at all. I consider these results wonderful. Luridie was proof that even archnobles of other duchies could obtain divine protections by offering their mana and praying diligently. We would need to find out more from her and add the details to our findings. Muriela nodded. Those who knew Luridie apparently wished she would have obtained divine protection from other gods, but the individual herself seems very satisfied with the outcome. She even joyously stated that she wished to thank you in person, Lady Rosamine. I was getting the impression that Luridie was probably a bit weird in the head, but all bookworms were good people by default. She was bound to be lovely and sweet. We had only spoken briefly during our tea party together, so I didn't remember her face. But I did remember the book she had allowed me to borrow. It was a love story written in ancient language that featured even more gods than Navarra's own tales of romance. It had been extremely difficult to comprehend since the actual events had been indistinguishable from the metaphors. Luridi must love romance stories to the very core. She would get along well with Muriela. No sooner had that thought crossed my mind than I quickly corrected myself. They were presumably close friends already. That was why Muriela had been the only one privy to her new divine protection. Lady Rosemine, may we lend Lady Luridi the new volume of Royal Academy love stories to thank her for aiding our research? Muriela asked, her voice quavering a little. Now that I thought about it, Luridi hadn't received the latest installment of Royal Academy love stories during our most recent tea party together. We had needed to prioritize Archduke candidates of top-ranking duchies while she was only an art scholar of a middle-ranking duchy. She was presumably dying to get her hands on her copy. I understood the allure of a new volume all too well, and how exciting it was to read one with your friends and share your thoughts with them. That kind of thing had been so common back on Earth, so it was weird to think that it was rare here. I could already imagine Muriela and Luridi pressed shoulder to shoulder as they read the new cut release together, sharing the occasional giggle. A warm, fuzzy feeling soon spread through my chest as the one person who had brought those books into the world to begin with, nothing made me happier. We are going to be asking Luridi to help us while her duchy is busy preparing for the inter-duchy tournament, I said. Of course, you may lend her the new volume. I am sure she will find Blunfud's divine protection while she reads it. Once our discussion about our joint research projects reached its natural conclusion, we decided to have Wilfred write a letter of questions regarding Trug. I then returned to my room. Feline, please bring me my letter from Ferdinand. I can't believe he's making me do annoying homework like writing a response in noble parlance when I'm already busy preparing for the inter-duchy tournament. I put down my cheeks a little, but it wasn't every day that I received a letter from Ferdinand, so I was still excited to read it. Feline had read me the part written in normal ink while I was unwell and unable to go to my hidden room, so I already knew what that half said. He had instructed us on how to use graphs for our research projects, repeated the instructions he had given Raymond, and detailed his plans for the inter-duchy tournament until the graduation ceremony. His intention was to spend the night of the tournament in Ehrenfest's tea party room. Riarda, we have permission from the Ob to use our tea party room, right? I asked while Feline was off retrieving the letter. Ferdinand was going to be staying with Justice Eckert and one of his Ehrensbach retainers. The letter was inspected at Ehrenfest, and the Ob gave us permission then, she replied. Lord Sylvester would have rather given them a room in the dormitory, but that will not do when Lord Ferdinand is bringing an Ehrensbach retainer. We are busy preparing benches for them instead. Ferdinand was caught in an awkward position. He lived in Ehrensbach, but as he was not yet married, he was still technically an Ehrenfest citizen. Thus, Detlinde had instructed him to stay in the Ehrenfest dormitory. Though that wasn't the real reason. The truth is, Detlinde heard about Mother's Royal Academy love stories and was enraptured by the thought of her escort arriving at her dormitory on the morning of the graduation ceremony to sweep her away. Ehrensbach nobles had protested. Ferdinand was already involved in their administrative work, so they feared he might leak information to us. But Detlinde had flashed her engagement face stone and obstinately stood her ground. Lord Ferdinand promised to grant my wishes, did he not? She had argued. I more than welcome Ferdinand getting a chance to spend time here, I said, but I can't imagine he'll get much rest sleeping on a bench in our tea party room. Riarda shook her head. This is the only way we can quash Ehrensbach's suspicions that he might leak information. Anything else would risk worsening his position there. Indeed, our tea party room was the only place where his Ehrensbach retainer could accompany him. If these plans had fallen through, though, then Ferdinand would have had to spend the night in Herschel's laboratory, an outcome he had written he was glad to have avoided. Yeah, they obviously would have stayed up all night discussing research. Ferdinand might even have forgotten about the graduation ceremony entirely. Is there anything they need other than benches, I asked. I wanted to make things as comfortable for Ferdinand as possible. As I considered our options, Riarda gave a wry smile. They will need separating screens and boxes for their luggage. But you can leave such preparations to their attendants. More importantly, milady, when you write your response to Lord Ferdinand, do not forget to mention that he should bring the time-stopping box. We will get the castle chefs to bring him food to take back to Ehrensbach. I noticed that she seemed more motivated than usual, perhaps because this was a rare opportunity for her to see her son Justice. She was going to be carrying out these preparations alongside the other adult attendants accompanying our students, since the rest of us were busy getting ready for the introductory tournament. Lady Rosamund, here's the letter you requested, Feline said, open on her return. Feline, everyone, prepare for our research presentation, I said. I'll be spending some time in my hidden room. Understood. I will do my best to learn our graphs. According to Ferdinand, one use of graphs was going to be as revolutionary as I expected. Or our use of graphs. He even predicted that we would receive many questions about them. Of course, it was down to the appropriate scholars giving the presentation to provide any answers. As an Archduke candidate, I needed to prioritize socializing instead. For that reason, Ferdinand had made one thing particularly clear. I do not mind you using these graphs. However, venture no further than what your apprentice scholars can fully understand. Apparently, it was possible that our graphs might receive more attention than our actual research. Though I doubt that, since the royal family participated in our ritual. With that in mind, I took the letter into my hidden room and reread the section on the front, despite Feline having told me what it said once already. Ferdinand had written a lot about our joint research with Arnsbach. It had taken quite a while, but the report we had given to Farlam had finally reached him. But he's more focused on what we discovered about Schwartz and Weiss than on our actual research. He was evidently starved for research, but there wasn't much I could say in response to his errant questions. I was leaving all the Schwartz and Weiss stuff to Herscher. I made a mental note to go to her laboratory once Riardo permitted me to leave the dormitory from there. I would find out exactly what Ferdinand wanted to know. I turned my attention to the part of the letter written in shining ink. You guided the royal family to the underground archive, I assume, and you did not enter yourself, correct? Oh dear. That was a royal decree. Couldn't go against a royal order. Couldn't get against that. Furthermore, how is your joint research with Dunkelfelger and Jawonkel going? Your letters stopped arriving all of a sudden. Do not tell me something happened that you dare not report. Uh-oh. I could already imagine Ferdinand tapping a finger against his temple. Oh no. Now that I thought about it, I had stopped sending letters around the time I guided the royal family to the archive. What had started as something so small was escalating by the day, and now I found myself unsure of what to write at all. Though I was also not writing to him because I didn't want him to get yelled at. Should I send an honest response now and face his fury at the introductory tournament? Or wait until the introductory tournament to explain and face his fury then? Wow, talk about an illusion of choice. Both paths lead to exactly the same outcome. I guess I'll start by writing what's most likely to earn his praise. My aim was to focus my letter on all the things that would warrant his praise. Then, at the introductory tournament, I would explain the events enough sure to earn me a scolding. It was the only way to avoid him complaining from the very start of our reunion to the end. For the non-shining portion of the letter, I stuck to harmless events that were already widely known, that we had donated mana to the royal family during the Royal Academy's dedication ritual, that I now knew how to use 2 staffs at once, that I had worked my hardest during our dinner match against Dunkelfelger, and so on. I also noted what I want him to bring on the day of the introductory tournament, as Riardo had suggested. That should do it, I eventually said. None of this will get me yelled at, right? Yeah, I think I'm safe. Yeah, I don't think you're safe. My response to Letizia was a simple, formal letter, meaning it would go through all the proper channels in Ehrenfest, but my response to Ferdinand needed to be delivered speedily, though. Through Raymond's, since it had to do with the upcoming introductory tournament. Actually, this is good timing. After all, I was already planning to go to the Herscher laboratory tomorrow. There, I would meet with Raymond to discuss our upcoming research publication and retrieve the book containing research on Schwartz and Weiss. Not many days left. I have to hurry. Raymond's research and Herscher's warning. We sent our list of Trug-related questions to Ehrenfest that same evening and received a response the very next morning. Evidently, this was a matter of great importance. Wilfred, what does it say? I asked. A corresponding with the royal family is a job of an op. Stop sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. Any letters you send will also go through plenty of checks, so you might end up leaking some sensitive information to the very person who used the Trug. It also says I can't entrust this matter to you, when I don't know how much of our duchy's internals you'll reveal into the world. That was fair enough. Trug was already familiar to some of the adult scholars in Ehrenfest, and it was likely that sovereign scholars of the same generation would know even more about it. Most importantly, Wilfred continued, if Trug really was used on sovereign knights, then that means there's a dangerous individual either within the Sovereign Knights Order or in the sovereignty in general. Farr doesn't want us getting involved in something so dangerous. He said that he'll discuss it with the royal family directly since he already needs to speak with them about your performing the starbinding ceremony. I nodded, resolved to leave all the Trug business to Sylvester. If anyone asked how we had found out about Trug ourselves, then we wouldn't be able to avoid mentioning Georgine. We hadn't yet received a complete update on the Winter Purge, though, so we didn't know what was safe to discuss. It was better to let him deal with things than give it a go ourselves and ultimately get yelled at. This letter can basically be summarized as "Don't get involved in this mess," written in 100 different ways. Be careful, Rosemine. I will. My only plans for today are going to Professor Herscher's laboratory and checking over our joint research with Ahrensbach. Right, I'm going to be helping with our joint research with Trawankel. Apparently, when it comes to improving the quality of our paper, we want as much mana as we can get. And so I went to the Herscher laboratory with my letter for Ferdinand in hand. Lisletta, Grisha, Theodore, and Lorenz were accompanying me. Everyone else was swamped with work preparing for the Interduchy tournament. Brunhilde was a central figure among the apprentice attendants, and the apprentice scholars were up to their elbows working on our joint research project with Rocco and Dunkelfelger. Riardo was busy rushing around maintaining communication with Ehrenfest and preparing to welcome Ferdinand. Matthias is spending today in the library with Lenore, researching fey creatures, Lorenz replied. It was only thanks to her knowledge that we were able to win last year. Meanwhile, Judith is practicing long-range attacks since her degree of accuracy can completely change the battlefield. Theodore nodded in response, a proud smile playing on his lips. Everyone was working hard, so I needed to do my best too. Is Professor Herscher here? Lisletta asked, announcing our arrival. Raymond came out to welcome us, frantically rubbing down his messy black hair. He probably wasn't going out much now that the Interduchy tournament was right around the corner. My sincerest apologies, but I must ask you to wait a moment, he said. We are in the process of cleaning up. The entire time his eyes were locked on the cart behind me. He reminded me of an animal at feeding time. Raymond shut the door again, at which point Lisletta giggled. We sent them ordinances last night and this morning reminding them of your visit, but I see they are still not ready. Not surprising, they had probably prioritized their research last night and only hastily started cleaning upon receiving the second ordinance this morning. By the time the door opened again, Raymond and Herscher were both fully presentable. I stepped into the laboratory and promptly asked Raymond for an update. Raymond, I received your letter from Ferdinand. How is your research going? I was permitted to present our tools for recording sound and for the library if possible. I would also like you to create something else for me. On top of the magic tool that's shown at a specified time, he had used the research on Schwartz and Weiss to design a magic tool that would search for books and documents. This new tool was a lot more mana efficient than the two shoe mills, so it could neither move nor speak. We researched it together, Herscher noted, but I will respectfully withdraw from this one. Ehrenfest already has more than enough to present this year. She would usually present her findings herself, but for this project she was leaving things to Raymond. Herscher continued, this is valuable research but a bit bland. There are not many libraries in the first place, so a magic tool designed for them will garner very little attention, especially compared to your research on obtaining divine protections or the new paper magic tool that Ehrenfest is making. A tool that can search for books and documents will only really appeal to researchers considering how few documents most people have and how easy they are to manage. Still, I was glad we were making it. In short, I said, I need to make more libraries. I shall immediately begin. The flow of time will remedy that for you. Making the prototype is far more important. More important? So mean. Herscher had interrupted me before I could tell everyone my grand scheme to fill the world with libraries. I slumped my shoulders and turned to Raymond. Raymond, as part of our research with Trawankel, Ehrenfest is currently in the process of making books that return to their shelves. Would you allow us to use the magic circle you amended for me before? I don't believe you need my permission to use Ehrenfest's paper and your own magic circles, Raymond replied. I could tell from the look on his face and his blue eyes that he was genuinely confused. So I made sure to explain his work had given us something that nobody else had access to. We intend to make it clear that you improved the magic circle for us, I said. You need to market yourself, Raymond, otherwise you will struggle to find a good patron and will ultimately fail as a researcher. For a poor men noble on bad terms with his family, Raymond sure seemed unattracted to his own skills and creations, or unattached to them. If I were Benno, I would absolutely unleash some thunder on him about now. Don't just give away everything for free, you idiot. As I understand it, Ferdinand procured some enormous wealth in the Royal Academy by selling his technologies and magic tools he created, I said. Take care not to sell yourself short, Raymond. I will. Lady Rosemine Hersher interjected. That's enough about money. One can always sell their research when they need to cover the cost of more research. That is what Ferdinand and I do. Now, there is not much time before the introductory tournament. Let us focus on that. I thought Hersher was pretty amazing for having research sitting around that she could just sell whenever she needed money. It bothered me a little that she was probably sitting on a gold mine and doing nothing about it. But it wasn't my place to intrude any more than I already had. Raymond, how will you report your findings to Professor Farlam? Hersher asked. She has already seen the prototype, so there shouldn't be much more to say. That said, she was quite a handful when I saw her final confirmation the other day. Farlam had apparently argued that our research wasn't joint in the slightest, since Raymond had come up with the idea and his mentor Ferdinand was reviewing them. She had said that I wasn't providing enough to warrant Ehrenfest's involvement and suggested that I be credited as a helper and nothing else. Of course, Raymond had fought back and argued that he wouldn't have been able to make the prototype without me. In the end, he had managed to resolve the matter by very subtly threatening to consult Lord Ferdinand and Lady Detlinde. It is very convenient that Lady Detlinde continually provides her support since our research reflects on her fiancé. After our family tea party, Detlinde had even given Farlam a stern talking to. Your failure to manage reports on his dormitory supervisor has brought shame to none other than the future op Ahrensbach, she had said. Perhaps that was what had finally spurred Farlam to deliver my report to Ferdinand? As I mulled over the situation, something suddenly occurred to me. I must ask, Raymond, what do the students of the Ahrensbach dormitory actually think of Professor Farlam? Does everyone just accept her tyranny? Well, she only becomes so demanding in a response to things that involves you or Ehrenfest. She blames you for putting her little sister through a nightmarish experience when she was punished, alongside her husband, Count Bindelwald, who was deliberately lured into a trap. Lady Georgine has since been trying to atone for your duchy's crimes by assisting Professor Farlam however she can. Count Bindelwald is that toad-looking man who went on a rampage in the temple, right? Anyone related to him is no good in my eyes. I guess Farlam and I will never be friends after all. Now that I understood why Farlam was so antagonistic to me, I realized it was best for me to just keep my distance from her. These circumstances has also put her on excellent terms with students who dislike Ehrenfest. Raymond continued, like the students who weren't allowed to participate in the dedication ritual after they failed to pass through your shield. Not all of Ahrensbach's apprentice scholars had been knocked back, but I definitely remembered 2 who hadn't been allowed inside. Raymond averted his gaze as if unsure how to phrase his next words. They had some very harsh words for you, Lady Rosamund. They were formerly from Workstock, so they resent you and your duchy for refusing to send them the mana they needed. Why do we have to send you the mana they need? We shouldn't have to do that. On top of that, the 2 girls were now mad that I had shamed them in front of the royal family. Farlam had apparently consoled them while insulting me at the same time, fostering an odd sense of camaraderie among them. Of course, not everyone from Ahrensbach feels the same way. The apprentice scholars who were able to attend the ritual told us what it was like and explained the practicality of obtaining more divine protections. Lord Ferdinand is now seen as having tremendous value due to his former position as a high priest and his familiarity with divine rituals. I see. I am glad to have been of at least some use to him. I turned to Lasletta, feeling a little pleased with myself, and signaled for her to approach. She smoothly stepped forward and presented Raymond with a letter. Please deliver this letter to Lord Ferdinand, if you would, I said. It describes what he will need to bring for the introductory tournament, so the sooner he receives it, the better. Raymond accepted the letter and said, Understood. I will return to the dormitory while you are brewing. I was relieved to hear that, but Hersher was blinking at me in surprise. Ferdinand is going to be here for the introductory tournament, not just to escort his fiancée during her graduation ceremony, she asked. As far as I was aware, Ahrensbach has no Archduke candidates who could take over in his absence. How long is he going to be here? Indeed, Detlinde and Letizia were Ahrensbach's only Archduke candidates, although Ferdinand was trusted to do administrative work. He was still considered a resident of Ehrenfest. It made no sense that he was able to attend, especially when Ahrensbach's Stick-Ab and first wife, Georgine, were also due to participate. Oh, I can't wait to see what will happen with that, considering Ahrensbach is dead. How is that going to be explained away? Or are they just going to tell everybody then that he died? I'm assuming they're going to do that. I was pondering the question when Raymond spoke up. As a student of Ahrensbach, he was best suited to answer. There are several archnobles in Ahrensbach who were once members of our archducal family before being reduced to a lower status. They will take over during the introductory tournament and such. Although matters of diplomacy must be carried not out by an archducal family member, this is not the case for matters contained within the duchy. And to my knowledge, the foundational magic will not dry out after only a day or 2 of not having been supplied with mana. Am I correct? I nodded. It is true that foundational magics can go a day or two without new mana, but in Ehrenfest we always have at least one person stay home to supply mana in case of an emergency. I suppose that is one dissimilarity between our two duchies. I'm already way behind when it comes to understanding noble culture, and every duchy has its own unique subculture. Man, this is hard. Raymond soon returned to his dormitory while I got to work brewing. This time I was producing the magic tool that he had researched with Hersher. My initial thought had been, why aren't they making this themselves? But Hersher had quickly won me over with a few simple words. I shall give you the tool after our presentation at the Interduchy Tournament. It is meant to be used in libraries, so I personally have no use for it. Now I was devoted to making it perfect. My library is going to have its very own search system. I started putting the ingredients that Hersher prepared for me in the brewing pot and stirred them all together. We chatted all the while, but we only really had one common interest, Ferdinand. And so, I said, Lady Ditlinde asked Ferdinand to greet her on the morning of her graduation ceremony like a scene out of Royal Academy love stories. That is why he cannot stay in the Ahrensbach dormitory and must instead sleep in Ehrenfest's tea party room. Hersher gave a half smile. Oh my, to think Ferdinand would agree to play along with such selfishness. I know. I sighed and noted that it was important for Ferdinand to stay in Ditlinde's good graces, but at the same time, Hersher said that he must truly wish to return to Ehrenfest. What? I replied. He could have secured himself a place in the Ahrensbach dormitory simply by feeding Lady Ditlinde a clever line or two, or relaxed here in my laboratory while doing research and the like. The fact that he had instead chosen to endure a night on a bench in a tea party room meant that he dearly wishes to return to Ehrenfest. Hersher knew Ferdinand a lot better than I did, and upon hearing her words I was struck with a strange feeling, something like being both happy and sad at the same time. Perhaps for a twisted person like Ferdinand, all these times he had written about wanting to do research had actually been his way of saying, I want to go home. I will do everything in my power to welcome Ferdinand, I declared. Then please deliver these to him, she said. This is a transcription of the research already done on Schwartz and Weiss. And these documents contain my own findings. Was it not cruel to give Ferdinand such documents? He had made it clear in his letter that the allure of research was the very reason he didn't want to stay in Hersher's laboratory. Professor Hersher, is your intention to keep Ferdinand from getting enough sleep, I asked. Are you not doing that already, Lady Rosamine? Your every action only adds to his headaches. Inviting the royal family to a ritual, gambling over marriage on a game of dinner with Dunkelberger. I expect that whatever lecture he has in store for you will cost him more than a night of sleep. Spending the time lost in some leisurely research will do much better for him. I can feel the blood draining from my face. Is there any reality in which so many members of the royal family participating in a ritual? A religious ceremony is not a hot topic during the Interduchy Tournament and graduation ceremony, Hersher announced. Or continued, the professors who have thus far had to rely only on reports from the participating students are eagerly awaiting the results of your research. It will surely draw more attention than anything else scheduled to be presented at the Interduchy Tournament. I expect Ferdinand will want to know the details. I could already envision Ferdinand scolding me nonstop from the moment we reunited, and my mood swiftly plummeted. I needed to do absolutely anything I could to at least get one word of praise before that happened. After seeing me lost in thought, Lisletta poured Hersher a cup of tea. Professor Hersher, what praise and criticisms do other duchies have for Ehrenfest? Following the dedication ritual, Lady Charlotte found that she was receiving more praise during tea parties she attended, and more smiles as people tried to butter her up. We expected some duchies to start attempting to curry favor with us, but after our game of dinner, the negative rumors vanished so quickly that it was almost disturbing. And these changes hadn't been limited to Archduke candidates' tea parties. Meetings of apprentice art scholars and apprentice attendants had similarly been affected. Grisha nodded. The lesser and middle duchies had started acting spitefully after failing to participate in the ritual, did an about-face after the dinner game. Now they smile at us, albeit with clear malice behind their eyes. If you know the reason, Professor Hersher, then we would ask for your input as our dormitory supervisor. Hersher lowered her eyes in thought. The duchies that participated in the ritual received words of praise directly from the Zent and advanced information. I had obtained divine protections. It is no surprise that they will be less openly negative, and then that Ehrenfest's connection to the royal family is clear to see. It is only natural that some have even started trying to win you over. It was a general and quite obvious description, spoken as if the matter had nothing to do with her. Then Hersher looked at my attendants. However, as you have noticed, their smiles only veil their true feelings. I myself hear nothing but criticism. On top of all the negative rumors about the Ob which have been so persistent, many now resent Ehrenfest's trickery. Those who had assumed they could participate in our joint research had soon found themselves forced into playing dinner. Then, after enduring the process and suffering heavy losses, those with malice had been refused entry by my shield. and in front of the royal family. They had subsequently heeded the call of the Sovereign Knight's order in an attempt to save face, only to learn that the knights that had been manipulated and weren't acting on the king's command. Everyone sees Ehrenfest and Dunkelfelder as being at the center of all this, and both duchies have earned much ire as a result. However, it seems to me that Ehrenfest is the weaker of the two, is bearing the brunt of their indignation. I see, Grisha murmured. They will need to be more cautious in more ways than one. Herscher gave a firm nod of agreement. You may not realize it, as you were not students at the time, but there was only a few years ago that Ehrenfest was near the bottom of the rankings. Its position rose after the Civil War, but only because the position of the losing duchies dropped. In other words, Ehrenfest did nothing to earn its new rank. And now, in what must seem like the blink of an eye, it is forming connections with the royal family. I expect the number of various duchies and nobles envious duchies and nobles is far greater than you expect. I remember Cornelius saying that things were entirely different from when he first joined the Royal Academy, but I didn't have a clue how Ehrenfest had been treated back when it was a bottom-ranking duchy. Previously, Herscher continued, the loudest voice said that Ehrenfest trends would have no staying power. But this year they argue that your rise to the ranks is due to Lady Rosemind's influence alone. As everyone understands that she is responsible for your trends, your joint research with greater duchies, and your connections to royalty. But I wouldn't have been able to do any of that on my own, I said. Whether it was for raising our duchy's grades, or getting the printing industry started, I was always relying on the help of others. Herscher's expression hardened a little. Indeed, these accomplishments were not due to your efforts alone. But they could not have happened without you. You must reevaluate your understanding of how other duchies see you. In their eyes, I was a female archduke candidate with an abundance of mana, the knowledge to invent various trends and technologies, first-in-class grades, connections to the royal family, and countless divine protections. I was so desirable that Dunkelfelder had tried to take me by force, even though it was already engaged. With all that said, Herscher continued, I personally enjoy seeing Ehrenfest as united as it is unto you. That is why I must ask you to take care. Do not lose sight of your surroundings. Right, I replied while continuing to stir the ingredients around and around. I sent the letter, Raymond announced upon his return, then shrieked pitifully when he saw Herscher eating at the table. Fret not, she said, I have set aside your share. At once his worries seemed to disappear. He sat down and started to eat as well. Laisletta, who had been acting as their server, began pouring Raymond some tea. Lord Raymond, she said, if you do not mind, I am very curious to know whether you intend to present the sound recording tool in its current shape. If so, do you not think it would be more adorable to combine it with a stuffed shoe mill? I recalled the shoe mill that Laisletta had made. It certainly was cuter than the tool on its own, and would draw a lot more attention. That reminds me. There was also the stuffed shoe mill she was making for Lady Letizia. At the moment, Ahrensbach is receiving almost all the credit for this research, is it not? Laisletta explained. Professor Farlam is named as the person in charge, you as the inventor, and Lord Ferdinand as the person who granted his approval. But if you have the magic tool take the form of a stuffed shoe mill, it will be clear to all that Lady Rosemind participated as well. Do you not agree that the very idea sounds like something that only she would come up with? Nobody in this laboratory would have considered it, at least. And shoe mills are very adorable. Herscher gave a curt nod, indicating that she had been at least partially listening to Laisletta's passionate speech. It is true that neither Raymond, nor Ferdinand, nor I would have thought of that, and it would be an effective countermeasure to Farlam. We intended to make it clear that Lady Rosemind had crafted the magic tool. So yes, do as you please, as long as it does not trouble us. Having secured Herscher's disinterested approval, Laisletta next looked at Raymond. The hopeful smile that spread across her face as she brewed his tea was intense, to say the least. And as Raymond was relying on her to bring him his food, he obviously wasn't going to refuse her idea. I don't mind either, he said, but will the stuffed animal be ready before the introductory tournament? It's already near complete, she replied, radiating enthusiasm. We shall bring it to you on the day of the tournament with our desired messages already recorded. By presenting both standard magic tools and stuffed shoe mills, I am confident that this creation of ours will appeal to men and women alike. Laisletta was framing this as an opportunity to emphasize my involvement in our research at Ahrensbach, but I had a sneaking suspicion that she cared more about showing a cute shoe mill to the world. Once I was back in my room, Laisletta finished the stuffed shoe mill in a heartbeat. The original plan had been for me to record some voice lines for Letizia, so my mana was already registered with the sound recording magic tool. We just needed to decide what I was going to say. What should I record? I mused aloud, hugging the white shoe mill to my chest. Naturally, as this was to be presented during the introductory tournament, stern words from Ferdinand are out of the question. Making such an obvious blunder would be like asking him to pinch my cheeks. Lady Rosemine, Muriel exclaimed. That magic tool is already so adorable, but would it not be even more wonderful if we filled it with words of love, spoken softly by a man? Oh, no! Oh, no. Her green eyes were wavering as if the very idea was bringing her to tears. To be frank, the words of love that were used in noble society meant nothing to me personally. Maybe they would be enough to make any of the girls swoon? At the very least, including them would make it obvious that Raymond hadn't done everything himself. That might work, I said, but whose voice shall we use? Lady Rosemont, I shall carefully select the most romantic lines that Royal Academy Love Stories has to offer, Muriel announced. Leaving that task to her was definitely the best move. There was no way for me to know which obscure religious metaphors were the most lovely and wonderful. We moved to the common room, whereupon Muriela started picking out lines one after another. I couldn't help but notice that she was working a lot faster than usual. Matthias, Lorenz, I said, would either of one of you be willing to speak words of love into the shoe mill for us? They were the most likely candidates since Theodore's and Roderick's voices were still too high-pitched. At times like this, I actually wish that Hartman were here. He would have repeated the phrases for us without the slightest hesitation or an ounce of embarrassment. He would have. He would have definitely done it. Upon hearing my request, Matthias let out a yelp and froze in place. Lorenz, in contrast, casually said, sure. Lorenz it is, then. Hold on, Lorenz, Matthias. Are you seriously going to say words of love in a place like this? He pointed at all the people in the common room, trembling so much it was almost sad. Dude, are you that embarrassed? Lorenz responded with a confused shrug. I mean, I'm not saying them to my crush, so how is it any different from reading the book aloud? Seems to me like you're just overreacting. But you just can't throw them around so casually. You have to save them for someone who counts, and they have to mean something every time you say them. Even here, Matthias was being very serious. His exchange with Lorenz was amusing to listen to, but Muriela was now waiting with Royal Academy Love Stories in hand, wearing a smile full of anticipation. For now, may I ask Lorenz anyway, I said. I apologize for being a pitiful retainer, unable to grant the wishes of my lady, Matthias uttered, unable to mask his regret as he took a step back. It really was something to feel so bad about, but he looked genuinely depressed. Matthias, you only need to worry about doing what you're good at, I assured him. Everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses. Yes, my lady. I touched the magic tool, and we got to work recording Lorenz's voice. He spoke one phrase after another, all expertly chosen by Muriela, though I didn't really understand what any of them meant. I used the very last recording to promote Ehrenfest books on the whole. We couldn't pass up an opportunity to advertise them to the many different graphics that would be attending the tournament. Our very own novel series, Royal Academy Love Stories, contains many more romantic quotes for women who wish to feel their heart race, and men searching for the right words to captivate the girl of their dreams. Get a copy of your own in Ehrenfest this summer. We will also be selling nail biters like A Dinner Story, night stories, and the history of Dunkelfelder, priceless stories at reasonable prices. Hopefully this gets more people interested in Ehrenfest books. Okay. I'll get to work on this, and I'll see everybody in the next one.